Geico presents sharing versus oversharing. Earlier this week, Claire Tippins shared a princess nickname generator, 3 pictures of her dog wearing a tutu, and 2 online quizzes, including what candy is your dream castle made of? Claire, your sharing has tipped the sugar scale and turned into oversharing. But have no fear, princess. Geico has something worth sharing with your internet kingdom, like how you could save hundreds on your car insurance just by visiting geico.com. No magic wand required. Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Blog Talk Radio.
Days that just go wrong, make you wanna holler and shout and throw your hands up in the air, wondering what it's all about. Can you think that things can't get much worse? In a second, oh, everything just goes south. Keep on keeping on. Whatever don't kill you makes you strong. Don't you worry, it won't be long. Darkness comes before the dawn. I'll tell you one day at a time. With God's grace, you're gonna be fine. You got what it takes down inside. Road ain't alone. Keep on keeping on. Some people will stand in your way. They're always saying what you cannot do. Don't stop chasing your dreams. Working hard to make them come true. Oh. And if it ever gets too tough, just remember you'll fail. We'll always see you through it. Keep on keeping on. Whatever don't kill you makes you strong. Don't you worry, it won't be long. Darkness comes before the dawn. Take it one day at a time. With God's grace, you're gonna be fine. You got what it takes down inside. The road ain't alone. Keep on keeping on. Keep on keeping on. Whatever don't kill you makes you strong. Don't you worry, it won't be long. Darkness comes before the dawn. I'll take you one day at a time. With God's grace, you're gonna be fine. You got what it takes down inside. The road ain't long. Keep on. The road ain't long. Keep on keeping on. Keep on keeping on. Oh yeah. Keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on. Whatever doesn't kill you, it just makes you strong. That is the theme of this show. We jump hurdles here at this show, and we encourage people to jump hurdles here at this show. This is American Sovereignty Radio with Dan Wilson down in Florida and Jennifer Montrose there in Alabama. We've got Glenn Atkinson from here in the Dallas area with us tonight, and I, Scott Osborne, here each week. This is going to be a really wonderful show. I'm looking forward to this show. One reason being is we're going to go back to some of our roots tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about Common Core. And for those who have been listening from the very beginning, we began this radio show. It was called Parental Sovereignty Radio because we dealt with the many things, including Common Core, that are affecting parental sovereignty in the home. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight when we bring in Matt Lynch, who is running for Congress in Ohio. Very excited. Had Matt Lynch on Conover U yesterday morning. I had a great interview. I know we're going to have a great time tonight. All of Matt's information is in the show page. You can go find that there. His Facebook, his Twitter, his website. Go to his website, log on with Facebook, log on with Twitter. There's a lot you can do with that website. It's interactive. And it's, I'm going to tell you, folks, I know who's operating that website, and I'm going to tell you it's the best stuff going on today in politics going on at Matt Lynch's website. That's just a fact. So go there, check it out. Log into Facebook, log in with Twitter, see what happens, see what you find. You'll find some neat little things. So we want to remind everybody to do that. Matt is running for Congress because Matt is tired of a bunch of fake politicians that we've got running around in Washington, D.C., around in our who are just playing politics. They're not really getting anything done. It's just all kinds of chaos going on, and he's a fighter. He wants to go to Washington, D.C., and he wants to fight with people. And therefore, that tells you he is our kind of candidate here at American Sovereignty. Matt, folks, I'm going to surpass our general opening remarks. We'll talk to Matt a little bit, and then we'll pass him around the room, around round table, and have some conversation with him. But for the interest of time, we're going to skip our regular round of opening remarks. And Matt, I want to go straight to you. I've got to introduce you this way again, because not only because I know it makes her blush, but because it really is important to why you're here, because we only support Contending for Truth Radio a certain kind of candidate. And it really, although it involves issues, it really has nothing to do with issues. And a few months back, one of my closest friends, Melissa Bohannon, let me know that she would be doing your social media for you. And so been there as a shoulder for her, back up when she needed it. But I have a certain respect for Melissa because I know what kind of candidate she supports. And I know she wouldn't have just supported just anybody. And so when you came with her recommendation, it told me a lot about you. And that's what we're going to end up talking about this evening, I think, probably the most, is the character of our candidates and what our candidates are actually doing. You can throw a set of issues on the table and play around with it all day long. But if we don't have good candidates in there, if we don't have good elected officials that understand some basic concepts, it's worthless to us. So I want to welcome you. I want to ask my regular elevator question. When you were a kid, did you want to be a doctor, a fireman, or did you go, I think I'm going to run for Congress someday?
Yeah. Scott, thanks so much for having me back again. It's great to talk to you and the rest of the crew on the line and folks across the country that I know are tuning in. And I'm just, I'm beginning to think that maybe you're representing Melissa a little bit here.
I am, definitely. I'm working to her on her work down here when she gets to Texas, you see. Ah. So I'm representing her. For all the people that are listening to Texas, you need to hire Melissa. We need to get her down here quick.
Well, she has done and is doing great work for the Matt Lynch for Congress campaign. And I can't tell you how blessed I've been to have her and, frankly, some other folks come together on our team to really put us in a position of winning this thing on March 15th, much less in November against the Democrat. So we're very excited to have Melissa, and I'm excited to be on the radio with you tonight. And, I wasn't going to be a doctor or a fireman or the things you mentioned when I was a kid. I grew up, I have 8 brothers and sisters, 4 brothers and 4 sisters, and my dad was an attorney that I was actually privileged to practice law with until he was 93 years old. And when I was a kid, my dad was a pretty formal guy. You couldn't come to the dinner table with a shirt on that didn't have a collar. T-shirts were verboten in our house. That was no good. In fact, it's funny when I start to think about this because if you, you have 9 kids, right? So we always had milk at the dining room table, but you could not put a carton or a jug of milk on that dining room table. You had to pour the milk into a glass pitcher and then serve the milk from that pitcher on the table. So my dad was a pretty straight guy, and virtually every night, or certainly many nights around that dinner table, it was a debate about the issues of the day, about politics and religion and the social issue of the day. And it was, I didn't think about it and didn't know it at the time, but it was really wonderful training for the kind of debating that we conservatives have to do on a minute-to-minute basis when we're fighting the fight for liberty and the Constitution in this country today. And I've often said that we didn't have dinner plates or placemats at our seats at the Lynch dinner table. We all had lecterns, and you better come prepared to defend your opinion if you were going to enter into the fray. And so that was a great experience for me, and led me to ultimately follow my father's footsteps to become an attorney and to join him in a small law practice. And till this day, I have a small law practice with my niece and my brother out in Geauga County, Ohio. Just the three of us trying to help people with their day-to-day legal issues. And frankly, a lot of those issues today have to do with fighting back against our government, because when we think about things like zoning or trying to build a home or a business, your biggest obstacle is often the local government. So we do a lot of that kind of work, and led me to a place 10 years ago when I was frustrated, complaining to the TV, screaming at the TV one night, and my wife challenged me to get off the couch and actually try to change things. And frankly, if you had asked me even 10 years ago if I'd ever be running for Congress, I would have been howled at that idea, because I had no thought that I could have much of an impact. But I got off the couch. I ran for local office as a township trustee. 4 years later, I'm running for the state house in Ohio, and went down to Columbus for 3 years as a state representative. And, the deeper I got into the belly of the beast, frankly, the more I could see how corrupt the process had become by the political elite in this country and in this state. And finally got to the point where I knew that the place I had to go was to the heart of the problem, which is in Washington, D.C. The state of Ohio, for instance, believe it or not, after our governor force-fed Medicaid expansion and Obamacare in Ohio, state of Ohio's $120-some billion budget, 50% of it, can you imagine this? 50% of it comes directly from the federal government in Washington, D.C. So the state of Ohio is not really a sovereign state anymore. It is simply a department of the federal bureaucracy. And that is absolutely upside down from what our founding fathers had in mind. And that's what I intend to do when I get to Washington, is try to turn that situation around. And with the help of folks like Jim Jordan's Freedom Caucus, I think we'll actually be able to do something. So that's the short story, at least, of how I came to this fight.
Well, and that is insane. 50% is absolutely insane. That boggles my mind. I've never really.
And that's not unusual for other states. You'll find other states in similar predicament.
Oh my goodness! I'm gonna have to look all those up. I'm sure somebody's got a chart somewhere of all of those. Be interesting to see where California and Texas fly on that map, and Florida down there, Dan Wilson. And we've got Jennifer with us. She's logged in. I want to start with Common Core. Because that's where the roots of this program are from. And I'll tell you where I'm at right now with Common Core. I'm almost disgusted at the fight against Common Core. Because after 3 years of fighting Common Core and its cousins, I've come to the conclusion that its cousins are just as big. There's 4 or 5 of them sitting out there, from early childhood development stuff to cradle to grave stuff, to Common Core, to state to testing. There's a bunch of pieces of this pie, and Common Core is just one of those many pieces.
Yep.
And I think we lose sight of the really big problem with Common Core. You've been one of the candidates, one of the few candidates that we've had that has been willing to say we got some major problems in the schools, our Common Core being one of them, all of these problems that are going on. And, it's affecting really two different sides. And I often hear this response, Matt, and I want to strangle every Republican that gives it because it makes me crazy. And some of my favorite Republicans in Texas gave it when we asked them about Common Core 2 years ago. Connie Burton said this: school choice. Now, school choice solves the problem of a bad school in an area, but it doesn't solve the systematic problem that we have in our schools of parental sovereignty, privacy of the home, control of the parent affected, as well as, on the other side, the learning process, what they're doing with math, what they're doing with other subjects, how they're micromanaging the class where the teacher can't just teach. You got these two big, huge assets, and you can't label them Common Core. They are, it's flat out, the left has gotten full control over our schools over the last 20 years. It's full-on socialism in our schools. We're in a mess.
Yep.
And I don't think dismantling Common Core, I think we've done a pretty good job over the last 2 years of dismantling a lot of it. I don't think that's solving our problem. I think we're in such a mess. I think we need parents' bills of rights. We've got CPS all over the country abusing their rights, interconnected with the schools, and the schools are interconnected with the health system, by the way, which we noticed this week that Obamacare is connecting to the Second Amendment. So it all goes in a circle. How do we fix this, Matt? How do we get across to the American people how dire this situation is? And it's Common Core, but it's Common Core on crack. It's a whole lot of things.
Yes, well, you're absolutely right, Scott. We've been fighting Common Core in Ohio now for the last 4 or 5 years, and the real solution, I tell people, is Common Core is just the latest cram down of federal education policy. We have to get rid of the Federal Department of Education, and we have to slay the beast that is projecting this control over all of our local schools. And of course, I say all the time, we are selling our liberty in exchange for a federal subsidy check, and in this case for education. But we do the same thing with roads, we do the same thing with health care, we do the same thing across the board. We want the money, and so we take the money, and with it we lose our liberty and take all the regulations and control that comes from Washington. So, as you probably know, the Federal Department of Education was the brainchild of what I thought was the worst president in the last 100 years until Barack Obama, and that was Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter brought in the Department of Education. Ronald Reagan tried to get rid of it. He unfortunately was unable to, but it's just time to get rid of the Federal Department of Education. In Ohio, this is actually a red-hot issue. And I mentioned you off the air, we had a race at one of the State House seats 2 years ago where a candidate knocked out an establishment rhino and essentially ran exclusively on Common Core. And it resonated with the parents. Mothers get very picky about their kids. And what did Sarah Palin call them? Mama bears? And he riled them up, and they put him into office, almost exclusively on Common Core. So it's a very important issue, and I suspect that most of your audience knows quite a bit about Common Core already, but if they can spend 90 seconds and go to YouTube and watch the 9 + 6 = 15 video, where a teacher takes her several minutes to tell you what 9 + 6 equals because of the crazy way they do math under Common Core. And it's just emblematic of not only substantively that Common Core is not a good thing, but it's really a much deeper issue because it has to do with federal control. And we have to push back.
We do, and it is, and really, I'm really proud of the states right now. There are a lot of states that are pushing back, and on a number of issues, and I really think that's what it is. And then we standing behind us here, standing behind Common Core, door number 2, is homeschooling. Yeah. And they are going to do everything they can to destroy homeschool. I'm fortunate. We live in a state, we live in the best state in the country, Melissa Bohannon, to homeschool when your grandchildren start coming around. Anyways, Melissa and I got a banter a little bit there. But, you know, there's some places in this country where it's horrific to homeschool. And if the federal government ever got a hold of it, oh, my land, Matt, we would be in a big mess.
Well, of course, the homeschoolers, I've said for a long time, they're going to save this country. If this country can be saved, it's going to be the homeschoolers that do it, because they are the ones that are not only getting the better education, but the better value.
That's
and they're
right.
going to be the ones prepared to actually fight back and become the leaders of the next generation. And I just hope we still are in a position in this country to allow leaders of that kind to run for office, because the establishment of both parties has no interest in letting outsiders move to the front. I mean, Donald Trump is, of course, the poster child, is the outsider. And
right.
Like Donald Trump or not, you can see how the establishment reacts to him. It doesn't matter if the people like him or want him. It's just a question of do the establishment funders and the establishment parties, do they want him?
Exactly.
And they sure as heck don't.
They sure don't. All right, well, Matt, I'm going to pass you around to the table and hand you to Jennifer Montrose for a little bit, and I'll let Jennifer pass it on to Dan, and Glenn's here with us tonight, so we'll let Dan pass you on down to Glenn, and let you guys have some discussion. Everybody's got their own things that they like to talk about and direction, and when we come back up, we'll send it around again. So Jennifer Montrose.
I feel like I'm in a tag team match here, but I'm
all
alone.
You are on a tag team, but it is a good team. A loyal family that's been together for a long time, and I can almost see exactly where they're going to go with their discussions. So Jennifer Montrose down there in the great state of Alabama, one of the states that's fighting against the government. Doesn't always win, but working hard. Jennifer, how are you doing? Here's Matt.
Welcome, Matt.
Jennifer, thank you so much.
Roll Tide. I live 7 miles from the University of Alabama campus, which we call the center of the universe, for those of you that follow college football. So, yeah,
I understand.
we got our right this New Year's to brag. So, anyway, but I've been watching. I just wanted to get your take on some things, because I've been watching what's going on with the immigration stuff, and. When my 13-year-old tells me that he's got illegal immigrants that go to school with him that barely understand English, and we're having to go through, I was noticing on your website about that particular subject of language, and, here we are in the United States where, our founding fathers, our language was predominantly English, and we did allow for people to come in as a naturalized citizen the right way. And I really don't like, when you talk to somebody on the phone with a business, and you can't even understand the dialect. And then now in a lot of places, they're forcing you to learn other languages. They're trying to teach kids Arabic. I think that should be a choice. English should be mandatory. Everything else is a choice. It's an elective, and why should we have to accommodate another language that's not the standard of what we have grown up with as a country, and how do we push through? Because there just seems to be, like, what I'm seeing in my community here is, got to be politically correct. You don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to have anybody to come out and say that you're racist because you don't want to learn, anything about the Muslim faith, or you don't want to learn Arabic or learn how to speak Spanish. And I've got friends that say, I don't want to learn Spanish. I'm perfectly fine with my English, and I shouldn't have to accommodate. Your thoughts?
Well, Jennifer, this is where political correctness is going to, frankly, destroy our country. Language is a very important unifying element of any society. It binds us together. It allows us to be closer to one another, so that even the kind of English that you speak down there in Alabama, which isn't quite the same as what we speak up here in Ohio. I can understand.
Hi, y'all.
Yeah. So it's very, very important. And there was a time in earlier generations where illegal immigration was going on when we required folks to learn English. In fact, they were anxious to learn English so that they could assimilate, so they could be Americans. And we've sacrificed that sense of unity, that sense of nationality in favor of diversity. But we really don't know what value that diversity actually brings in terms of diversity of language, because it adds to division, adds to misunderstanding, might even add to suspicion. And that's not a good thing, obviously. So making English the official language of the United States is a very basic thing we should do. But more importantly, I agree that we should not be putting up with businesses and certainly government accommodating other languages to such an extent that we no longer can recognize, what country we are in and how we can communicate with one another. And the illegal immigration problem and the legal immigration problem, for that matter, are having a tremendous impact upon our country. Your child that has a non-English speaking illegals in their class. This is happening all across the country. The other day, Scott, you and I talked about, whether that was a problem in Ohio. It's definitely a problem in Ohio. We're spending nearly $1 billion a year in Ohio on illegal immigrants in the state of Ohio, for healthcare costs, for education costs, for criminal justice expenses. Nearly $1 billion. So this is not a small problem even for Ohio, and of course it's getting worse. And most importantly, it has a tremendous economic impact upon the people of our state and the people of our country. We're keeping wages low and preventing folks from rising the economic ladder simply because they have to compete with illegals from south of the border, or even if they're competing with legal immigrants that come here. You hear a lot of talk about the increase in the visas in the omnibus budget plan. Well, those visas are for legal workers, but those workers coming from, frankly, the other side of the planet even, they're going to work for lower wages. And the American workers are going to have to compete. And that is not a recipe for rising standard of living in this country, but rather the opposite. And it's so frustrating that we can't have Republicans actually make that case. When the Democrats come out and say, gee, there's this income inequality, we should say, yes, it's true, and it's your fault. It's your fault because you're allowing this immigration problem to go on for year after year after year and reducing the ability of American citizens to earn a living and support their families. So it's frustrating on a lot of levels to me, and I did quite a bit of work on this in the Ohio legislature, trying to keep Ohio from being a magnet for illegals by denying them driver's licenses and other bills that I had proposed. And yet, when you have party leadership or party so-called leaders like Jeb Bush who want to stand up and say, well, they're all coming here for love, it's difficult to overcome that problem. But I think people are waking up. We see now the problem becoming so bad on our southern border and down in Texas there. Of course, you guys are seeing it. People are waking up to this, and hopefully, if we get the right president, we're going to be able to push back. We're going to be able to build that wall. And gosh darn it, yes, let's make Mexico pay for it, and bring this problem under control.
And another thing, we've got a pretty active fair tax community in the state of Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that I think that I got a friend of mine, Tom Vanille, who ran for Congress in District 6 against, goodness gracious, the names are leaving me at the moment. But anyway, here's the thing. You enact fair tax bill, and then, what does that do for the illegals coming over here? What does that do for those that are here on visas working in the United States? I think it provides a positive, reinforcement for those of us that are citizens here in the U.S. and where, how they're able to, keep their income, keep their money. We've got, I live in the coal mining industry in the area that I live in. We've got, Jim Walter's mines, and they have had layoff after layoff, and you're looking at, what we can do with our economy to straighten this stuff out. And it's ridiculous. But, your thoughts on, how you see the fair tax playing a role in all of this.
Well, I'm a strong advocate of the fair tax. The Internal Revenue Code and the Internal Revenue Service itself is just beyond anything that anyone could have imagined could develop when the income tax was first brought in, the federal income tax was first brought in. The idea that you're going to essentially tax creativity, tax the productive efforts of our citizens, we should have known that it would lead to what we have today, which is diminished productivity. And of course, we have every member of Congress using the tax code not in any way related to trying to raise revenue, but only related to implementing some policy to promote some activity or punish some activity. It's completely out of control. We need to get rid of the IRS and the income tax, get rid of the withholding tax, get rid of the payroll taxes, and have an across-the-board consumption tax, and allow all this untaxed revenue. This is it's so frustrating. The IRS has turned virtually every person in this country into a tax cheat. I mean, there just isn't anybody who isn't, some plumber someplace doing a job on the side for cash, some landscaper someplace putting in a tree for cash. I mean, we're returning into a cash society because folks don't want to have to report anything. So what do? Well, we're bringing all kinds of new federal laws about 1099. Now, if you pay anybody more than a couple of $100 a year, you got to issue a 1099 so Uncle Sam can get into their pocket. This is just nuts. We get rid of the income tax, we get rid of all these problems, and we will generate more revenue because we'll have more taxpayers, frankly, and we'll have more economic activity. And it will go a long way to helping us overcome, ultimately, which I think is one of the most serious problems we have, which is our debt and deficit. If we don't get our tax system under control, we won't be able to get our debt and deficit under control. And if we don't get that under control soon, it's going to be simply too late. So I'm all about getting the fair tax finally put in place.
I agree with you because, when you have a 501c3 and C4, when you put the fair tax in place, that stuff goes away.
That's right.
And that allows for organizations that have been bullied by the IRS to not talk about things that are conservative and, smaller, limited government, personal responsibility, and, all those things, and in the early days, in the black churches when they didn't have they didn't have a place to go to deal with their business, and they did it in the church house, and so, now people are having to be so careful, and they came out in Texas where somebody wanted to, make, preachers have to comply their sermons to make sure that they weren't, stepping out of bounds, but the government overreach, the BLM, all these things that are coming out now, it's scary because we're losing our lands, we're, our communities, our small businesses are being taken over by foreign businesses. We've got a lot of immigrants that are coming in and setting up shop, and government is doing everything they can to usurp all of that and take our rights away from us a little bit at a time, to where we don't even realize it's happening until it's already happened. So, I was reading over your platform, and I just think this is the best thing. I really, really, really am hoping that you can have a ground game that will pull this off for you. And with that, I want to reach out to Dan down in the great state of Florida. How's the weather down there, Dan?
Actually, it's cold, at least Florida-wise. It was down into the upper 40s this morning, so I was freezing my butt off. I moved down here for the warmth.
Dan, where in Florida are you? I talked to someone earlier today, and they told me the same thing. It was in the 50s.
Yep. I'm just north of Tampa, and it's usually beautiful down here, but we get these cold fronts once in a while, and I hate the darn things. I've been down here for over 20 years, so my blood's gotten thin.
I have 5 daughters, and my youngest daughter, some years ago, moved to Fort Myers, Florida, where she's been now the last 12 or 15 years, and she's just not coming back. she's like comes to visit around Christmas, see a little snow, but that's it. She wants to go back to where the sun keeps everything warm 12 months out of the year. So my
dad's down in Punta Gorda, which is just north of Fort Myers, and I gave up Rhode Island. That's where I grew up a long time ago, and it was in 88, I think.
So coming out of Florida, you must be a Jeb Bush fan.
Yeah, right. Just like I like the plague.
It's funny when you talk to people from a state like Florida, because Jeb Bush, of course, would go on and on about what a wonderful governor he was in Florida, and I didn't really follow him down in Florida that much, but of course up here in Ohio we have John Kasich, who does the same thing. He touts all these lies about what he did to bring Ohio back, and people outside the state, they just don't know that it's simply not true. That not only has Ohio still got a lot of serious troubles, but all the good things that have happened had nothing to do with John Kasich. So I always suspect that it was the same in Florida, that Jeb Bush was not really the savior of Florida, and it certainly is not going to be the savior of the United States if we put him in the Oval Office. In fact, quite the opposite.
Exactly. He's just going to bring us right back to what we're trying to get rid of. He's a rhino, just like, his brother. The only of the whole clan, the only one that was almost presentable was the father. But after that, it went downhill from there.
I think George Sr. only looked better because he stood in Ronald Reagan's shadow.
Yeah, probably. I mean, and I think, being from a generation that saw World War II and they have a slightly different view of our country.
Yeah, fair enough. I certainly I agree with that. We that greatest generation, we already missed. There's so few of them left, and these kids today, I sound like I'm 64 years old. So, but when I see these kids in their 30s that have no real understanding of what we went through, what this country went through during World War II. Heck, they don't know what this country went through in the first Gulf War. So it's very frightening. It goes back to some of the comments we made about education. But we have to, as Ronald Reagan said, we have to revive our liberty in each and every generation. Otherwise, we will lose it. It's not in our DNA.
I mean, if you look at my my Facebook page, it's a Reagan quote that says, freedom, liberty is only one generation away from being lost.
Yep, exactly right.
That is so true. And I never dreamed in my life that, I'm getting close to 60 myself. I never dreamed we'd be in this position, but we are.
Well, that's why we have to fight back. That's why I'm running for office, and I have to remind people that if they want to help me in this battle, that they can go to mattlynch.com. I have to remind people because Melissa will send me a text telling me I haven't mentioned it. If they want to support a candidate that's going to go to Washington to push back against the Rhinos and the Democrats, because they both have to be fought, then they can go to mattlynch.com and support me in any way they can, including signing up for my wife's prayer team, which is very, very important to our campaign.
Well, most definitely. I believe that one of the first steps we need to take is to bring God back as the foundation of our country.
Absolutely.
He, since the Pilgrims first stepped foot on North America, our values have been Judeo-Christian, and that's the foundation of our country. I mean, something we can't replace, and this progressive movement wants to remove that. And one of my major pet peeves against them, being a devout Christian myself, but another thing that really bothers me, and I blame a lot of the problem on the cost of our health care, the cost of insurance, is tort reform. It's something our country needs desperately. I mean, I was driving down the road today, and this is what brings this to mind, is I saw 18 billboards with lawyers saying, "Have you had the right or wrong medicine? Sue. Have you been hit in a car accident? Sue. Did you slip on your neighbor's steps? Sue." And it's to the point where people just see it as an easy way of making money, and they don't understand everybody pays for this. And I have not heard a single word coming out of Washington regarding tort reform in years, and when I do, all I hear is a few words, and it disappears.
You don't hear it because the Trial Lawyers Association is among one of the largest donors to campaigns in Washington, D.C. They spend a lot of money. When Obamacare was being put together, of all the crazy things it didn't touch the lawyers. And I am a lawyer, so I've got to include myself in that. But didn't touch the lawyers and their game of lottery in personal injury cases. We don't really do personal injury, so I've never been into that. But I've certainly known many, many lawyers, and over the years I've had any number of clients that will call. I remember years ago getting a call late at night from a client who had bitten into a cheeseburger at some fast food restaurant and chipped a tooth or some such thing, a minor injury. And but they were experiencing pain. Now, they didn't call their doctor. They didn't go to the emergency room. They called the lawyer. because the first thing in their mind was, hey, can I get some money? And it's just very sad to see that the legal system has become sort of a mini lottery. You get the right case, and you're going to make a lot of money, and lawyers will make a lot of money along the way. And so tort reform is something that we do have to implement. Now, I must confess I have some issues with federal tort reform because there are certain limits. You know, I believe in limiting the federal government, and for the most part, that kind of reform should happen at the state level as opposed to the federal. Actually, down there in Texas, you've had some pretty good results with tort reform, haven't you, Scott? I know that from what I read, it's made a big difference.
We've got a great group of people in Austin. I am so proud to be from Texas. And we got some screwballs down there. We got Joe Strauss. We've got our own John Boehner down there. But for the most part, we got a lot of good guys, and they've been working hard on a lot of different issues. And tort reform has been one of them. And it's been far enough back that we're starting to really see some of the results. And it's incredible. And I just have to agree with you 100%, Matt. I think a lot of these fights we want to go fight, we want to fight them at the federal level, and it's nuts to go up there and do that and give them any more power. We're trying to chop down their power, not build it up. It needs to happen on the state level. The states, we were given the independence from the federal government for a reason, and we can win this battle at the states. The left knows that. That's why they like to keep it at the federal level. That's where they win the battles. So, Glenn,
here's part of the frustration, though. As you know, the Republicans in the last 4 years have had tremendous success in taking governorships and controlling state houses across the country. I think there are now 39 states that are controlled by the Republican Party. In Ohio, we control everything. The legislature and the governor's office, but we still don't necessarily get conservative governance. And this is the real battle here. It's the battle for the heart and soul of the Republican Party. What do we stand for anymore? Are we just Democrat light? Are we just a political machine trying to promote our own power and money, or do we actually stand for the conservative principles of liberty and limited government that Ronald Reagan, are we the party of Reagan? Are we the party of Lincoln anymore? And that's why I'm in this battle.
Oh, I understand that. And, one of my my frustrations is on the state level, we aren't getting that done. That's the problem. And, here in Florida, it's ridiculous. And, as I said, 18 billboards in the course of 5 miles is... it shows it's a sue me state.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And we have to make that change, and I do agree with downsizing government. As a matter of fact, that was kind of going to be my second question. Right now, we have 270 different departments inside the federal government, and some of these departments are subsidizing programs like watching a shrimp run on a treadmill, and you end up spending $3 million on this. Yeah. And you add that up over 150, 200 departments where people are looking at the mating habits of a gecko. I mean, how do we attack that? And how do we, when we're talking about, we can't afford Medicaid, we can't afford Medicare, and yet we're watching a gecko, the mating habits of a gecko that we're spending,
well,
add this all up in the billions.
I don't want to lose the gecko in the shrimp boat here, but you're exactly right. In fact, I'm surprised when you say there are 270 departments. I'm surprised there aren't a lot more than that, actually. because they certainly spend as if we're doing so much at the federal level we just should never be doing, and we don't even know what we're doing. That's the truth. Is our government has become so large that no one really knows. The thousands and thousands of regulations. I have to be watching Louis Gohmert on the House floor today, and he was talking about the criminalization of America because these thousands of regulations, whether they're EPA regulations or health regulations, or it might be, that are being pushed out by the federal bureaucracy every single day. And if you violate those, it's a crime. You know, what kind of a world do we live in when these unelected bureaucrats can literally set up a situation to send you to jail? I have a supporter who lives out in Ashtabula County here, and he runs a little coffee shop, and he sells French fries in the back if you want a burger and fries. And when I first met him, he was telling me about how he had to pay hundreds of dollars a month to dispose of his used French fry oil, and how the French fries that he sells for $3 or whatever it happens to be for a plate of French fries could be a third cheaper if he just didn't have to pay a specially certified hazardous waste disposal company to come take away his half gallon of French fry oil once a month. So I told him, I said, well, look, you know, if I was you, I'd probably just take that French fry oil out to the woods someplace and dump it half a gallon. You know, who's going to notice? And he said, yeah, but if I do that, I go to jail. It's a crime. So we're just in this crazy situation where we can't even keep track of all the laws that we're potentially in violation of and going to go to jail for. So, which is why when you talk about all those departments, we just have to get rid of a bunch of these departments, like the Department of Education I mentioned, but that is certainly not the only one we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, we're going to have to, do a big-time revamping, cleaning house. But the French fry oil gets me the most because, you know, you can turn that into a biofuel. I know a friend of mine goes around and he collects it, French fry oil from, you know, McDonald's and Burger King or whatever, and he brings it home, puts it through a filtration system, and he runs his diesel engine on it.
Yeah, that's probably a crime. That's probably a crime, but you know, but I think don't mention his name.
His car smells like a French fry going down the road. It's ridiculous, though. These laws that, and then we're paying for all this money, and then we complain that we don't have enough to pay into what, you know, we've paid into for our entire lives. It's, and then they have the audacity to call it an entitlement. You know, I was one of the people that ended up having to go on Medicaid. I had a series of 5 heart attacks to the point where had a near-death experience 3.5 years ago. Home of 6.5 weeks, and I'm allowed 15 minutes.
How was that? How was that experience? Did you go to the light, or what happened then?
Actually, I did, and I didn't go to the light. I ended up in a white room, basically. So all I could see around me was white, so I started praying. And I had one vision, and it was Jesus Christ being nailed to the cross. And he looked over towards me, and our eyes connected, and it was like a physical connection. And they told me I coded like 3 times during this period,
wow.
and I, obviously I didn't know it. But during that time, he said, I have more work for you, and he sent me back, and I started praying every day, for guidance, and it threw me right into politics.
Well, God bless you. That's, it's so true that the political battle today in this country is really a spiritual battle. It's political, it's social, it's a lot of things, but it's underlying it all is a spiritual battle. I absolutely believe that. And, I have to tell you that when my wife and I debated between each other about running for Congress, when you decide to do this kind of thing, you try to count the cost, like the Bible says, and think about, well, how can I raise enough money? Do I have enough time? All those kinds of issues. And we actually came to a place one day when we were praying about it where we sort of realized that we were asking the wrong question, because the question should not be even can you win. The question should be, does a political race of this kind, does it serve God's kingdom? Win or lose. And if it does, then that's what you do. You climb the mountain, you take on the Goliath, you do whatever has to be done in service of God's kingdom. And I have to tell you, this is my second run. We lost 2 years ago, just barely. We only lost by 2,500 votes in a 54,000 vote race. But we were able to speak God's truth to an awful lot of people during that time. And that is a significant achievement as far as I'm concerned. I want to win, and frankly, I expect to win. But I also believe that the battle in and of itself has tremendous value for my neighbors, my friends, and my country. So that's why we're in it.
Oh, I agree 100%, and I believe that that our Constitution had divine inspiration, and that we were meant to be the leaders of the free world, to act as a guiding light for the rest of the world to follow. And today, prior to 3.5 years ago, I was what I call a lazy Republican. I was conservative. I've been a conservative since day one, but I never really pushed anything, and I try to avoid political, talking and getting deep into politics. Well, probably about 6 or 8 years ago, but I started to get changing because I started getting really furious with the way that things were going. And now I'm in the heart of it, and I pray every morning for what to write, and I put out my daily article, and then I do my 2 radio shows, this one and Saturday Symposium, when I go into the historical aspect, because history is my real big thing. And when it comes to the Second Amendment, I went out and got a Colt 1911, and it's because it served in every war since Spanish-American War, right up to present. Navy SEALs still choose to use the 1911 Colt. So it's the first of semi-autos, and has a wonderful lineage. So even my choice of guns goes into history. And what I was getting at, though, is on the Medicaid, people have got it all wrong. You know, I paid into the Medicaid system for, God, since I was 16 years old. That's what FICA stands, you know. And but we have to get the abuse out of that.
Yeah.
So you know, the people that really do need it. I'm not. I can't get on the transplant list right now because they make it so difficult. My cardiac infraction is at 20. I have to get down to 15, which means you're basically. Yeah, exactly. I have to be half dead, and I have one artery left out of 5. So my.
Well, that's you're being subjected to the whim of those death panels that Sarah Palin used to talk about, that they said wouldn't exist.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And it's putting you to the point where, you know, 15% in dead is very, very small margin. And this is a whole thing about, I believe in Medicare and Medicaid because these are things we put into. I mean, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars did I put into it over the course of the years?
Well, there's some truth to that, but it's also true that there are a bunch of people that did not put into it, I have to say. So my dad, I mentioned, you know, he practiced law with us until he was 93. He actually lived until he was 97. And I used to talk to him about his Social Security check that he got every month. Now, my dad was a lawyer, and he had made a good living, and but he looked forward to that check every single month. And I used to just go over his house and just empty my wallet, and just give it to him, and just say, you know, it'd be easier that way. Because the system is so screwed up that, you know, and the government has so mismanaged the system, the Social Security system, the Medicare system, the Medicaid system, that there's really no rhyme or reason to it anymore. It's unrelated to what anybody's put in as to what they get out. And then you end up with folks like yourself that have real need that can't get the benefits they need because the system is so poorly managed. So,
yep, you
can't expect big government to do anything correctly.
No, and I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. But with that, I'll pass it over to Glenn Atkinson. I guess you two already know each other. So, Glenn, take it from here.
Hey, Glenn.
Glenn might be on mute.
Did we lose him?
Well, we might have. And it's been great discussion so far. Now, there is one. Yeah, we've still got Glenn on the board, so Glenn might be unmuted or muted. There's one thing that you threw at me that almost knocked me over. You've got 5 daughters.
Yes. I have 5 daughters and 9 grandchildren. And I don't think they're quite done yet. I told them all that I needed them to be paying into Social Security to support me and their mother, so they're working on that.
Well, see, I was about ready to tell you, you're officially nuts.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
I was raised where there was 2 of us, and I always said any more than 2 is crazy. And I've been a full-time uncle/parent for the last almost decade and a half, raising 3. And I've always said, okay, now once you get past 3, if you have 3, you'll never want to have any more than that. So to get to 5, I don't know how you do it. Highest of honors to you. 3 is my limit. I think they'd have to put me in a home somewhere if we had to go ripping into another baby and diapers and everything else.
Yeah.
But out of that, and there's a lot of there's a lot of part of raising a family that is important for leadership as well. So incredible. So 5 daughters, 9 grandchildren, and some more on the way, huh?
Well, they're not done. At the moment, nobody's pregnant that I'm aware of, but that doesn't mean I couldn't get a call tomorrow. But I tell you, I used to, when my girls were teenagers, I can't tell you how often I called upon Ronald Reagan's wisdom of trust but verify in dealing with women.
So very, very true. Well, Matt, it's come back around to the top, and I want to focus on a little bit different direction. I want to talk about this word that I'm so proud of many Texans for using so readily, and I see the rest of the country standing up and using it, and it's called primarying.
Oh, yeah.
We've got here in Texas, man, we've got some really powerful conservative grassroots. And I have seen a number of occasions where somebody was elected because they were considered a very good, solid conservative, started to stick their foot out of the line and got it smacked. And I see that going around the country, and we've got some stories that we can apply to this. We've already mentioned J.D. Winteregg and Charlie Miller, J.D.'s field director, and an awesome young man. Nobody wants him to miss next week's American Sovereignty with Charlie Miller. But J.D. Winteregg has a really, really good chance of taking Boehner's seat. I'm a firm believer that he was going to beat Boehner in this primary, and that is why John Boehner retired. I'll believe that until the cows come home. David Blatt proved that money is not what it takes to win. It is a powerful grassroots. And while money is highly important, millions and millions and millions of dollars to win a campaign anymore is just not true. And we've got you're primarying Joyce there, and J.D. Winteregg is really primarying the establishment now, and it looks like he could really have a win. We've got a senator here, a state senator, Bob Hall, wonderful, wonderful man, cream of the crop. Went in and primaried another candidate, an incumbent named Bob. If you don't think that wasn't difficult, beat one of the strongest incumbents here in the state of Texas. This can be done when we get not just donations. Donations are important, and not just commercials. Commercials are important, and yard signs and everything else, but a quality, hardworking team, both in social media and on the ground, to make sure that everybody in your district knows who you are, what you stand for, what you want to do, and why they need to vote you in, and the incumbent, who is a Democrat with an R after his name, out. And you are amassing a very nice grassroots team. And I'm a firm believer that it's going to take you over the banister. But I want to talk about that a little bit. It's different than it used to be. In the days of Phyllis Schlafly, back where the guy who had the most money just won it. It's fully.
Well, look, did I lose you there, Scott?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. Things have changed a lot. Money is still important, but you don't have to have as much money, and I certainly will never have as much money as my incumbent Congressman Dave Joyce opponent. But 2 years ago, when I announced I was going to take him on, and there's a lot of background to it, but it was a very last-minute decision. We actually filed our petitions on the last day, almost the last hour that they could be filed, and it shows you how naive I was, because I was in the state legislature and I had a small campaign fund of about $70,000, but at least I had something to sort of go out and buy a few yard signs with. And shortly after I filed, I discovered that under federal election laws, you couldn't use any of your state campaign money for a federal campaign. So none of it could be used. So we literally started our campaign with 10 or 12 weeks out, didn't have $1 in the bank, just from a dead stop. But 12 weeks later, because of the incredible efforts of the grassroots from every Tea Party and Liberty group and 912 group in Northeast Ohio that knew what I had done in the State House and got behind that race and just made a tremendous effort in a very short period of time and took us from a dead stop to a dead heat. And in the last week of the campaign, my opponent was literally spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to overcome the momentum that we had built up, and he just barely did. It was a very, very, very close race, and it was all attributed to the grassroots and their frustration with the establishment and their openness and the voters' openness to a truly conservative candidate. So when we lost that race, our next race for this round started the next day. And in that time, we've been able to build a campaign team that has folks organized in every one of the 7 counties of Northeast Ohio that covers our district, that not only has really some of the highest caliber, nationally known folks working on the campaign, including one Melissa Bohannon you may have heard of, and we really have just it's been a tremendous blessing, tremendous learning experience, and we've actually raised a little bit of money as well, and so we're just in a very, very sweet spot for this to go our way in just a very few weeks, and it really will be. Well, I have to say it's a combination of two things. It certainly is the strong efforts of the grassroots, but it's also the obstinance and the arrogance of the ruling elite that support Dave Joyce, that push him out there and try to sell him as a conservative, but then have him vote left and liberal every single chance he gets, including voting for the omnibus bill a couple of weeks ago, including voting to raise the debt limit 6 times now since he's been in office, just the short time he's been in office. He supported reestablishing the Export-Import Bank. You mean, you won't defund Planned Parenthood, you won't defund Obamacare. It just goes on and on. So, just so much that the American people will take. And thanks to the Internet, thanks to talk shows like your own and so many others, even local talk shows here in Northeast Ohio, we are getting the word out. And people do understand that Matt Lynch is not part of that go-along, get-along gang in Washington. But I'm going to go there and join Jim Jordan, and we're going to crack some heads and try to take this government back and this party back away from these phony Republicans and return it to the voters of the 14th district. That's what I'm determined to do. And by golly, I think we're going to do it with God's help.
I agree 100%. And you know what? It's not a difficult accomplishment to accomplish. Ronald Reagan showed us how to do it. And we just have to go back to the basics. We have to go back to why we're conservatives. There's a lot of conservatives out there that they go back and forth on different issues. I've got friends who are Republicans that want gun control. Yeah, and what I don't understand about that, Matt, is one of the basic tenets of why we're conservatives is we know that the federal government cannot micromanage, as Herman Cain said, and that anything is almost always handled better at the state level. Why would you be, as a conservative, even if you believe there should be gun control, why would you be throwing that ability at the national level when we already have way too much control there? We are well over controlled there. And I think you've got the message right. It's we're going to get there. We're going to send you there. I'm going to send it back around the table one more time. We've probably got not enough time for it to go around one more time. So I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer Montrose down there in Alabama.
Good discussion tonight. You know, it really gets me sometimes. You know, you think you can't unseat an incumbent, but we've seen it happen recent, you know, election cycles. So I mean, you know, there's some good, I think there's some good grassroots activism going on out there right now, and I can tell you, as far as the Second Amendment goes, I think we've reached one of the highest gun sales with all that's going on, and the crocodile tears that we saw coming out of our divider-in-chief in his latest, you know, television. So, you know, I just think it is really sad to see that we've got patriotic warriors that are out there carrying American flags, fighting to save our liberty, our sovereignty, you know, to save our Second Amendment rights, and they're being labeled as terrorists, you know, and it's time that we have members of Congress to come out and take a stand against, for the citizens, against all of this executive order that seems to be trying to come down from the Hill, from the Oval Office.
Well, Jennifer, you are so right. You know, when I ran 2 years ago, I was making the point that we should have long ago gone down the impeachment road with what I call King Obama because of his abuse of his executive authority. But you know, here's the thing. I have a theory about this a bit. You know, we have these cowards in Congress that they don't want to stand for anything. They want to be politically correct every day. They don't want to offend anybody. And so they simply don't want to exercise their constitutional authority to legislate. And so when the executive, in this case Obama, steps forward and says, "Well, I'm just going to do this. You know, I've got my phone and my pen, and the American people want this, and Congress won't do it." And there are, I'm telling you, there are Republicans in Congress that are sitting back tonight saying, "Oh, I'm glad he's doing it." They'll never say it's publicly, but they're glad he's doing it because, see, now they don't have to worry about fighting that fight. They don't have to take a stand because it's out of their hands, and they'll go back to their districts and they'll say, "Oh, that terrible Barack Obama and his executive authority and his executive orders." But the truth is, they don't want to stand up for the Second Amendment or anything else, frankly. They want to just, you know, kiss babies and shake hands and collect their pensions and not actually stand for any principle. And actually, we see then the same thing in the Supreme Court. I actually think that the Supreme Court, in recent years, they're sitting back watching Congress give up its authority. They're seeing Obama grab authority he doesn't deserve left and right. And so the Supreme Court says, "Hey, why shouldn't we get in on this party? Why shouldn't we abuse our judicial authority in the same way that the president abuses his executive?" And again, Congress just, you know, kicks the ground and says, "Oh, shucks, you know, what can we do?" Well, they can do a heck of a lot. The U.S. Congress controls the jurisdiction of the United States Supreme Court, not to mention their paychecks, and they should exercise that authority to put the squeeze on the United States Supreme Court and put them back into the bounds of the limitations of the Constitution, as they also should do, of course, with the President of the United States, and should have done long ago by way of impeachment. So I get very, very frustrated. I had a congressman tell me 5 years ago on a visit to Washington before I was running for Congress that by golly, if President Obama does one more of those executive orders, they're going to do something. Well, you know, they don't do a darn thing. And I'm really fed up with it. That we have just got to be calling these people out and demanding that they defend our liberty or go home. And frankly, that's what I intend to see happen with Dave Joyce. We're going to send him home, and I'm going to be loud and articulate and defending our liberty in Washington, D.C. And frankly, I hope to have several dozen members of the Freedom Caucus around me. But if I have to stand on the House floor myself and be screaming at the executive branch, I'll be doing it.
Wow, I mean, that's what we need. One question I have kind of goes along with Jennifer's about the Second Amendment. As far as I know, and I've read the Constitution inside and out, left and right, and including the Federalist Papers. But from a legal perspective, if you're going to, the amendments are locked in place, and if any change to the amendment is proposed, like, you can't use machine guns or something like that, doesn't it have to go through the entire amendment process in order to in order to become legal? Otherwise, it's like a rider.
Well, this is of course the frustration, because you're right. In theory, if we're going to amend the Constitution, we should go through the amendment process. But how do we enforce the limitations of the executive when he decides to ignore the amendment process, or even when the Supreme Court decides to ignore the limitations on its authority and simply, you can say they're legislating from the bench or they're legislating from the White House, but it's being done in an administrative way, and unless you have some branch of the government that's willing to say no, we won't allow this, then it just goes on. And in the case of our government, the ultimate power we know is the power of the purse. How many times have we heard this talked about in the last few years? The power of the purse. Why won't Congress exercise its power of the purse and pull the plug on Obamacare or you name it? And it's because they're cowards. Because they're more concerned about, not going to the right cocktail party or not getting on the Sunday talk shows than they are about actually doing what's right under the Constitution. And we've got to get rid of people that primary motivation is self-interest or party interest, and get people there who really care about the people. The other day, Scott, you had that clip you played from Red Skelton, and he talked about, it's from the people to the leaders, not the leaders to the people. We're not servants. We're not ruled upon by our elite bosses here. They're our servants, and they have forgotten that. And frankly, we the people have to teach them a lesson. And that's what I'm about to do in the 14th district.
If let's say I challenge it, and this is a hypothetical question, and I own a automatic weapon, and I'm arrested for owning that automatic weapon, could I argue legally from a constitutional violation and win?
Well, probably not. But it wouldn't be because you'd be wrong. It would be because the state of the law enforcement is such that that's simply holding up the Constitution and saying, hey, I have a right, would be insufficient, because they're still going to haul you off in handcuffs and put you in jail. And there have been many folks that's happened to on a lot of issues, not just guns, but a lot of other issues as well. But, it's an interesting, really more than interesting, it's sad state of affairs we have in this country today. I know you've all followed what's been going on over in Colorado, where this group has gone on to this federal land preserve, I guess it is, and they've occupied it. I guess they're still occupying it, as far as I know. And there's all this discussion about, well, you know, it's understandable, but you know, it's a lawless act, and they shouldn't be doing it, and so forth. We have entered into, in my opinion, an era of lawlessness in this country, and the lawlessness is coming from the very top all the way down to your local neighborhood, so that you can have the President of the United States essentially ignore the law of the land, the Constitution, and do whatever he wants because he just decides he thinks it's best. But in doing so, he creates an environment of lawlessness all across the board, so that individual citizens can also be brought to a place where they say, well, gee, if the president doesn't have to follow the law, why do I have to follow the law? If a city can have a sanctuary state and allow illegals and invite illegals to come in, they don't have to follow the law. Why should I have to follow the law? And this kind of lawlessness it's not good for our country. It can lead to, you know, chaos and ultimately a real breakdown in our society, and you know, you don't never know where that's going to lead. So I think we're in a very delicate place in our history, and it's going to take a lot of prayer and frankly a lot of God's grace to get us through this time. And I've like many of you, you know, I've read the Bible, and I've heard a lot of preachers talk about the end times, but I don't read in the book of Revelation anything about a strong Western Christian power. You just don't find it. And that gives me great pause about what the future holds for the United States of America.
Well, we definitely got to get out there and fight, and that's why Jennifer, Scott, myself, Glenn, you know, we're all out here doing what we're doing.
I know, and we appreciate it.
Well, we want to bring it back to the way our founding fathers envisioned, and you know.
Well, and if folks in your audience want to help, they can go to mattlynch.com and you know, make a donation of $5 or $500 and help the campaign to get the word out. So in Northeast Ohio, we can add that to our arsenal of grassroots volunteers and really take back this part of Ohio. And I think JD, as we've talked about, has got a great chance. I think the Ohio delegation with Jim Jordan and JD and myself and a few others can be a very, very different kind of congressional delegation than it was under John Boehner. It can really lead the way in Congress to turn us back towards constitutional liberty. And that's what I'm praying is going to happen.
I think we're all praying for that, because it would be nice to say Ohio is a solid conservative state instead of a swing state. We're working on it here in Florida, too. We could get rid of Miami.
Ohio is supposed to be a bright red state. Like as I've said earlier, we control everything as Republicans in Ohio. The only thing that's out of control in Ohio is the Republican Party itself.
Boy, do I know that feeling. Hey, Glenn, are you there or not? See if Glenn's around. I guess not, but...
I don't know. I haven't checked. Listen, it's been great conversation so far. And what time are we sitting at? 30 already. The time just absolutely flies by. Love doing this. This is one of my favorite things to do, Matt, is to people out there that are running for office. Number one, you couldn't ever get me to run for dog catcher. when I first moved here. Michael Smith kept talking about me running for a chair, a precinct or something. I said, no way, I don't want it. I will more than happy to be the shoulder behind any candidate you can find, but I don't want to run. It is a huge sacrifice on behalf of anybody to run for office and then to be a public servant. And you've done it at your state level. You're getting ready, I believe, to do it at the national level. And it's a huge sacrifice. It's a sacrifice on behalf of your wife. Your kids seem all grown, so it's not as much as it is when they are all at home. But it's a huge sacrifice, and it's important because I do believe we can take the country back. I believe if we get a whole lot of Matt Lynch's, we can take this country back. And I've been honored over the last 4 years, and I think Jennifer Montrose and Dan Wilson and Glenn would back me up on this, that we've got some really good candidates out there. Oftentimes, those are the candidates that have got the gumption to primary an incumbent that just isn't doing the job right. And we don't always win those battles. In fact, our track record really isn't the best for those who we support because sometimes we're supporting the guy like Zach Poskovich that's going after Bob Corker, Cork the Dork. And it isn't. But you've got a great path to a win. And J.D. Winrig has a great path to a win. And we just want to make sure that we want a slumber party in Washington, D.C., in Capitol Hill, in the Congressional Office Building. We'll have a big old pizza party. But we do. We want to keep fighting, and that's why we do what we do. And this is archived, Matt. This show and the other show we did on Monday with Rodney, both those shows are permanently archived. And we'll be sharing them throughout the rest of the campaign. Anybody can listen to it. Great. In fact, only about 7% of our listeners are listening right now live. The bulk are listening in archive up to 2 weeks from now is when the bulk of our listenership listens. But we're going to continue to fight forward because it is important for our young people. It is important. I'm raising my 3 nieces. And there is not a day that doesn't go by that I don't worry what the church is going to be like in 30 years and what their society is going to be like in 30 years. The economics, morality. I've seen what changes have happened in my short 47-year-old lifetime. And I know by the time that they're my age, things could be really crazy.
Well, you mentioned the churches. The churches are really the most important organizations in this country for change. You know, I'm running for Congress, but the truth is, I wouldn't have to run for Congress if these churches would actually get up on the pulpit and preach the truth in such a way that motivates those folks in the pews to be on their knees every day, but then get off their knees and go vote the right way. Because so many of them don't even vote.
That's right.
And there's just no excuse for this. And I have talked. You know, I ran last time. There's a local church out here in my own county, and they are very much anti-abortion, pro-life, as am I. And they put white crosses out on the lawn in front of their church. You may have seen this in some other churches as well. And they'll put up a big sign with a count on the number of abortions that have gone on in the state of Ohio during the year. And they have all these white crosses out. So when I ran for office, I called them up and I talked to the pastor and I said, gee, you know, I'm the pro-life candidate. I'd like to come talk at your church. I don't even want to have to talk from the pulpit. Just let me go talk to your pro-life group that meets there every couple of weeks. And he said, well, you know, we really don't like to get involved in politics. And I said, well, if that's the case, Father, you better get a lot more crosses. Because you're not going to save those babies by just talking to yourselves in the church basement every couple of weeks. You've got to change the policy of this country. And that means you're going to have to get involved in politics. I had another pastor say to me, well, you know, I don't want to get in any trouble with the government. And I said to this pastor, I said, well, you do know that they crucified Jesus Christ. I mean, if you're not in trouble for preaching the gospel, if you're not out there causing offense in the biblical sense that you are preaching the truth of what, you know, that Christ and his sacrifice is the only road to salvation. If you're not doing that, you might as well close up the church. And I'm afraid to say that so many of our pastors today are just unwilling, not just unable, but unwilling to take the risk to actually preach the truth from the pulpit.
Amen. That's our problem.
Yeah.
We would fix a good bulk of our problems if we would do that. We would solve a lot of issues that government wouldn't have to worry about. You won't talk about fixing some gun control problems.
Yeah.
You want to some gun crime. Get the churches doing what they're supposed to be doing and change people's lives. That'll save situations like that. But, you know, I'll tell you, we deal with the issue of gay marriage, and we deal with it all crazy anyways. We don't deal with it right. We don't have the right message on our side in the first place. But the reason why, Matt, we're having a hard time on the conservative side with everybody understanding our position for marriage between a man and a woman, because the churches quit teaching and the pulpit preachers quit preaching against adultery and fornication 30 years ago.
You are exactly right.
And so how do you expect a bunch of young people who've never heard that adultery is wrong in the first place and it's okay to just live together?
Yep.
God doesn't mind. How do you expect them to get homosexuality? You're not going to. I'm going to tell you, here we are at the end of another show, Matt, starting this conversation. We're going to have you back just for this conversation because it's a huge one. And it is. It really is our problem. Neil Mammon, I love his stat. I've been using it ever since. And Zach Koskovich sent me that book, Neil's book on the church. And only 1/3 of the people in the pews on Sunday morning are voting.
Yep.
The problem with that is if the left ever does get full control like they'd like to have, the sword is going to go straight through the church first. And if you don't think any different, it won't be guns. It won't be all of this other stuff. The first thing they're going to go after is God. And, you know, we've got to be standing up for it. We are sitting at just enough time to pass it around one more time. I'm going to pass it around to Jennifer and Dan and Glenn, if you are there. Jump in there if you want. And then, Matt, we'll do like we did this morning. I'm losing my voice, I do believe. We'll do this like we did this morning or yesterday morning and kind of do a little bit of end of the show banter. But Jennifer Montrose.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Scott. You know, good subject matter here towards the end. You know, and, you know, I tell everybody, you know, everybody wants to say that you're not Christian enough to be elected. You're not, you know, and I'm like, since when, you know, do you cast the stone? Because he who is without sin, the only person that walked on earth that was sinless was Jesus, you know, in my, at least from the way I read it and the way I understand it, you know. So, you know, we're looking for someone to be the perfect person. I mean, when Bear Bryant died, everybody was looking for the perfect coach for the University of Alabama, and it took years for us to finally find somebody. But it's because people have this expectation, you know, and part of the problem I think that we have in the church is we've got the salt has been removed from the pews, and people are not voting their values. They go to church, they say amen, praise God, to pro-life and don't kill babies, and then they go vote for Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. At the end of the day, somebody that completely is against the values that they say that they stand for and they say amen to when they're sitting in the pew. And
well,
I think
Jennifer,
they have. Yes,
you're right, and there should not be a Christian preacher anywhere that is afraid to stand up in his pew and tell his congregation that they cannot, in good conscience, as a Christian, vote for a candidate that wants to go on killing unborn children. I mean, it's just, they just have to say it. But they're afraid to say it.
Well, I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican, and I believe in voting your values. I'm a big believer, in a lot of the stuff that Frederick Douglass had to say when he was read his writings and that sort of thing. But when we talk about voting your values, but then so many people who are low information voters that don't have an education past 8th grade, don't know how to read, they pay attention to the media, the propaganda. That's how they learn, is from what they see, and I think we've got a culture now, especially within our schools, that are not really doing their teaching like they should, and it's up to us as parents to do our part. And it's hard when you're a single parent working several jobs to raise children. Circumstances are the way they are now. We have so many communities, especially, in the minority community, mothers, no fathers, children without fathers. And we've just lost a lot of that, We see that down here in Alabama District 7, Terry Sills District, one of the 5th poorest districts in the nation. And we see that at a lot of other places, too. But, we have people like Senator Edward Guillory, who saw the light, and decided to cross the fence, to the conservative side. And we have many others that are attempting to do that now. And, but I want to ask one more time, where can people go when they want to learn more about you, financially contribute, because we're just about out of time. And I just want to make sure that everybody knows where to find you on all the social media sites, and everything, because we need to get you elected. That is 100% definite. And we can't stand for what we have now.
I appreciate that, Jennifer. And they can all go to mattlynch.com, where they will also find a link to my Facebook page and my Twitter feed, and they can communicate with me there. They can contribute at all three places, and of course any amount is going to be helpful, particularly in a small budget campaign like ours. So mattlynch.com is the easiest and best place to go, and I'm betting, Jennifer, that my friend William Green from the Frederick Douglass Foundation.
I know William Green, yes, and I have done some extensive work with K. Carl Smith over the years, who is the founder of the K. Carl Smith, founder of the Frederick Douglass Republican Movement. Mm-hmm. And, many of us we've had him on this show many times. But yeah, we're seeing some things change. People are getting to the point to where they've had enough, and they're tired of living paycheck to paycheck. They're tired of giving all their money to the IRS. Small businesses are not flourishing like they used to. People can't go into a bakery and ask somebody to do what they want to do without being, ostracized. People cannot stand for liberty like they want to without being called terrorists.
Yep, that's right. The Frederick Douglass Foundation is doing tremendous work for the conservative movement in the minority community, and William Green has been a wonderful and early supporter of my efforts to run for Congress, even before that when I was in the Ohio House. So the Frederick Douglass Foundation is a great friend to the Matt Lynch campaign. And again, folks can go to mattlynch.com to support that campaign and our efforts in that regard. And Jennifer, I so appreciate your kind words of support. And I in most of my speeches, I end them by telling people there's two things we have to do. We have to work hard, and we have to pray hard. And if we fail to do either one, then victory will be extremely difficult. But if we do both, I'm telling you, there's no end to what we can accomplish.
Well, I want to reach out to the National Federation Republican Assembly, which I am the president for the Alabama chapter, and get people to go to your website and really take a look at who you are. Because I think that what we stand for, the conscience of the party, the Reagan of the Republican Party, I think that many of our Republican Assembly members across the state would really like to support you and get behind you. So
that would be just tremendous. I would so look forward to that. And you can of course reach me through mattlynch.com. And I'm about to rattle off my personal cell phone number here. Do you think 2,000 people would get it that way? I don't know. But I
think I could probably reach out to Melissa or maybe.
Oh yes.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got.
We all network here on this radio show. We've had many of people that we have connected to since Herman Cain ran for office.
Well, and Jennifer, I'm in contact with Matt Lynch's real boss, his daughter.
That's good.
Running his
that's right.
campaign.
That's right. Yeah. My daughter Carrie is somewhere saying, "Don't give out your phone number."
We'll put you in contact, Jennifer. Dan Wilson, we'll pass it to you. At what time are we sitting at here? We're sitting at about 15 minutes.
Right, so I'll keep it relatively short, but I kind of laughed when I heard your pastor or priest say how he doesn't want to get in trouble. And Scott, do we ever get out of trouble?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like an oxymoron. If you want to make changes, you got to stand up against the status quo, and it's, as you said, Jesus gave his life for this, and he was always in trouble. We're always in trouble. Scott and I both were. Well, we were on the. We both got ousted out of Facebook 3 or 4 times in the early days, and it's. I just kind of take it as a compliment now.
Well, it's important that we talk about getting in trouble for standing up for what we believe, but at every occasion when I've been in a position where I thought, do I really want to say this in front of this crowd? Inevitably, people will come up and say, "I'm so glad that you said that, or you spoke in that way, or you spoke that truth." Because that's what I think. That's what we need to do. But they're reluctant. They're afraid for whatever reason. They're not in a position to do it. The leaders in the conservative movement that give voice to these values give a sort of permission. They allow others to follow. I mean, that's what leadership is all about, right? It's about articulating the values that others really already have in their hearts, and they just need someone to show them the way. And that's why programs such as yours on the internet radio and J.D. Wintereg and so many other candidates and leaders. Jennifer, listen, we've never met, but you're already one of my heroes, because in your community, for you to be, aligning yourselves with Republican candidates and conservative values is not an easy thing to do. I know it's not an easy thing to do, and God bless you for having the courage to do that. But it's so important, because if we all don't stand up, then no one is going to express these values. When sometimes folks said, "Well, gee, why are you running for Congress?" If I don't run, nobody runs. If I don't have this battle, if I don't raise these issues, nobody raises these issues. And the rhino establishment, phony Republicans just have their way with the people of the 14th district, and so we, in some ways, we that are in a position to do something, we have an obligation to do it.
Well, exactly right.
I agree. Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
We do it. Well, we're all doing it for the same reason.
Yes.
Love of God and country. And if we don't change our ways soon, there's not going to be a country. And it's something we've all been dedicated to our entire lives, and it's something that I think all of us are willing to fight until the very end for. And we need to get Washington to understand. When you mentioned Red Skelton, that's one of our favorite starts and finishes to our shows. As a matter of fact, Scott, I think it would be appropriate tonight to end with Red. We love that 1969 speech that Red gave on the Pledge of Allegiance. Because
I was going to ask you about that. That was it 1969 that he did that?
Yes, it was.
And was that from his television show at the time? Was he on TV at the time?
That was the Red Skelton show. Yeah. And it was right at the end, and it was I think it was a 4th of July special, and and when he did it, and I've never heard a better explanation of the pledge than that.
There was a time when the entertainment industry, when the entertainment community was very patriotic, very dedicated to upholding the principles of our country, and would really support and aid us in these kinds of battles. We certainly know a lot of that went on during both World War I and World War II. But boy, we're in a different place today, aren't we? That's a whole other program we could have, Scott, about what's happened to the popular culture as evidenced in the entertainment industry, and how it had an impact upon our society and our kids.
Isn't that true? Another huge station. Well, we're winding up at the end, folks, and want to remind everybody they're all there on the show page. If you're listening through the show page, if you're listening, London Press anymore, I'm going to have to write down the name, or any of the other places you can listen to it and see the show page. You have to go to the show page. You can go to mattlynch.com. You can find all his social media. You can find all the information. You can also find out how to donate. And let me tell you, here's the thing. We at Contending for Truth Radio rarely ask people to come. We have candidates come on that I don't even bother with the donate part. Not strongly, but let me tell you, when we say donate to Matt Lynch, here's what you're going to get. You're going to get your money spent wisely in the campaign. That I have full confidence in. It takes a little bit of money to run a campaign. It takes money for yard signs. It takes money for some expenses that come along the way. But like we say, Matt, you're never going to have even close to your opponent's money. But you don't have to. But it's still going to take some money. Go to Matt's social media, share some Twitter stuff, share some Facebook stuff, share his videos, share his website. Again, I'm going to tell you, I know the guys running this website and putting it together, and the things that they are doing in the campaign world with websites right now is absolutely fantastic. You want to go to see Matt Lynch's website and check out what's being done there. Very, very important. Link to it with your Facebook, link to it with your Twitter, and get in there and get involved. It's a great way of helping if you're in Alaska or if you're even in Europe. You can still help Matt Lynch that way if you're on the ground. And hopefully we're going to kind of target some of the people in in the 14th District with this show. If you're on the ground, get a hold of the campaign office and say, listen, I can walk streets for you. I can do yard signs. I can pass out materials.
And we're doing all that right now.
That's what it's going to take. And with that, I want to pass it to you, Matt, for any last things that you have on your mind, anything else that we forgot. Great conversation again.
Well, it's great to be with you again, Scott, and I want to thank you and Dan and Jennifer and Glenn, wherever he might be, for the opportunity to share this. You know, it's always it's such a great, uplifting thing to be able to talk with other conservatives across the country that, you know, share your values and that are, frankly, putting their shoulder to the wheel in my battle and so many others across the country, and praying. That's, you know, I certainly want people to go to mattlynch.com and support me in any way they can, volunteering, making a contribution. But boy, just praying. The power of prayer is real and is the essential tool in our campaign. My wife runs our prayer team, and you can sign up there, and you'll get emails from her talking about specific issues that we're praying for on a weekly basis. So we encourage you to do that. And I want to thank you all and all those that are listening for keeping in the battle, because it's a frustrating time for all of us with what's going on around the world, and especially in Washington with our King Obama and what he did even just today. We didn't really talk about all this gun control nonsense that he's coming out with. But there's only one way we can ultimately win this battle, and that's by changing the kind of people we send to Washington, D.C. That's what I'm fighting for. I know that's what all of you are fighting for. And let's work towards a day when we can have our country on the right path again and turn our nation towards God in such a way that we can be confident that our children and grandchildren will have a free and Christian nation to grow up in.
Well, amen. Amen. And with that, we want to thank everybody that's listened. Please take action. Want to remind everybody, we've got on Friday, we have Ladies Bible Class picking back up again. The ladies will all be gathered in California. I'll be here in Texas. And we will continue the story of King Saul in the Old Testament in 1st and 2nd as we wander through the Old Testament looking for the portrait of Christ, the Word, and the Church that God paints in the Old Testament story. And then, of course, Saturday Symposium, and, of course, Conover U and American Sovereignty next week. And with that, I think you're right, Dan. I think we should leave out with Red Skelton. I think he's right here in the background somewhere. Hey, Red Skelton, why don't you tell us about that teacher in Indiana?
I remember a teacher that I had. Now, I went through the 7th grade. I went to the 7th grade. I left home when I was 10 years old because I was hungry. This is true. I work in the summer and I go to school in the winter. But I had this one teacher. He was the principal of the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. To me, this was the greatest teacher, a real sage of my time, anyhow. He had such wisdom. And we were all reciting the Pledge of Allegiance one day. And he walked over, this little old teacher, Mr. Laswell was his name. Mr. Laswell, he says, I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester, and it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word. I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge, dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity, allegiance, my love and my devotion to the flag, our standard, O glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because your loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts, freedom is everybody's job. United. That means that we have all come together. States, individual communities that have united into 48 great states. 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose, all divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose, and that's love for country. And to the Republic, a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people, and it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power to live one's own life without threats, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle or qualities of dealing fairly with others. For all, which means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance: under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer and that would be eliminated from schools too?